The hills will soon be alive to the sound of Formula One. Yes, let's go racing. What an off-season we have had. Williams, Toto Wolff, Sebastian Vettel, driver lineup changes, and of course Lewis Hamilton blew up the internet. This is the Pitbox. It's a very good evening. Welcome to the Pitbox with me, Sasha Martininga, and of course, my good friend as always, Gary Formato. How's it going, Gary?
Good and you. Nice to be here.
Listen, we're going racing. Did you think we were going to do it?
And listen, I've always thought we were going to do it. Yes, there were some doubtful moments, but I'm just happy that it's all happening and we are going racing. And I think it's actually very important that it's all starting to get going again and happening. I think everybody's just, I think, so excited about it. It's going to be a little different, in terms of how they play out the races and so forth. But I'm just happy that life for us anyway is starting to become a little normal again.
It is getting a little bit normal. So, Formula One have officially announced an 8-race calendar at this stage of the season. Here is the calendar that comes up. We're exactly a month away from a double weekend in Austria, then the Hungarian Grand Prix, a double weekend in Great Britain, then Barcelona, then Belgium, and then Italy. What do you think of the calendar, Gary?
Sasha, the calendar could look however to me. I just think it's great that we actually have a calendar. I think, the back-to-back races is going to be something that we've never ever seen before. It's going to be interesting to see how that sort of pans out in the sense that, are we going to have 2 repetitive Grand Prix? Certain cars do well on certain tracks, drivers, etc. And could we have 2 carbon copies? So it's going to be, I think, certainly in Austria, the first couple of weeks to see how that all pans out and just how much things actually change in a matter of a week, if in fact they actually do.
Okay, so there's a lot of talking points about the racing. People have said reverse grids, and people have said, well, why don't they do it one race going, in the normal direction, the other race in the other direction. We'll discuss those in a few moments. However, there's been an incredible amount of planning because of the coronavirus and COVID-19. We know the whole world has been in a lockdown, and we know that people like Ross Brawn have been in huge conversations together with Chase Carey and various governments around the world, not only just promoters. This is a worldwide sport. It's not like a local football league that can happen within one country. This has to travel everywhere, and there are lots and lots of people. So the FIA, the Formula One management have released how to go safe racing. So let's pull that up on the screen, Gary, and we'll just go through exactly how the safe racing sort of works itself out. I'm just going to pull up that on my laptop over here so I can read it a little bit better. But the main thing, I suppose, is checking testing. Gary, as we all know, anywhere in the world, when it comes to what's happening with COVID-19, everyone has to get tested and checked as regularly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So when they say it's private testing, so it'll be self-testing. All the teams will self-test before they travel, etc. So just I suppose do whatever they need to do within the timeframes that are required to make sure that nobody travels that may sort of carry anything with them. So I think that's pretty. It makes a lot of sense. And I think the big thing for me is, I think I can just jump to your point number 2. I think it's obviously races with no spectators. I think that's going to be a massive thing for everybody involved in Formula One and watching the race, even on TV. We all know just what a spectacle and what a show Formula One is at the circuits, the amount of atmosphere that the crowds carry with them. It's going to be quite interesting to see just what it actually does and how a race event works without the sort of crowd that you have in Formula One. I think also the team personnel are limited. TV personnel are going to be limited, so you're not going to have people arriving there with their partners, with family, or anything like that. So it's very, very it's cut down to the core basically, and people will be there with only what they need to be able to operate for over the weekend.
Yeah. Also, isolated travel as well. Personnel will travel in isolated manner using chartered flights as much as possible, private transfers between the venues, hotels and airports to ensure a restricted, what they call a bubble. the various people are going to walk around and work around in these bubbles at the circuits, so that they try not to. They're not. Unfortunately, you're not going to have the Renault guys having a chat with the Ferrari guys. But that's the nature of what they've had to come up with. And then, of course, social distancing measures, the procedures which will be put in place, where pre and post race ceremonies being altered as a result. Because of that. So I mean, we're in for a very interesting time when it comes to Formula One going back racing, Gary. But I've got to commend Formula One for what they've done and how they've managed to get this done. And if you think as a worldwide sport, albeit that this is only going to be in Europe at the moment, it's quite remarkable that we're even going racing, at all.
Yeah, look, exactly. It is remarkable, and you've got to understand just what goes into a Formula One weekend. You arrive at the team personnel, everything that goes with it. It's a big show. So to put a show like this into one space, like a paddock, and get it all done and put the measures in place, it's really going to be, I think, set an example for a lot of other sort of events going forward. Luckily Formula One allows us, got a massive TV audience. Once the cars are out on the track, they're doing their thing. So I think we're going to get something good there. I think at the end of the day, it's great to see that we sort of made light of the fact. It's nice to see things getting back to normal, but I think it's important that the world sees that yes, life is going to carry on. The sun is shining again, and we're slowly starting to get the wheels in motion again.
Yeah, which I think is terrific. So we've looked at what the calendar looks like. We've looked at how the safety procedures are going to work. The one thing very, very important that has come out from both Chase Carey and Ross Brawn is they have said that if by any chance a driver contracts the coronavirus and then has to go and self-isolate, it does not mean they're going to cancel a Grand Prix. It only, as we had in Australia, where all of a sudden they decided let's pull the whole event. Things will go ahead. Third drivers will be used, and the event will go on. And Gary, you got to believe that after 3 months since March, even close to 4 months, they sort of understand the situation a lot better. And if somebody does contract it, of course they've got to get that person out of there. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everything has to stop.
Yeah, and I think that's I think sort of common sense seems to be prevailing now. As you said, 3-4 months later, with better understanding of what's actually going on, how much we understand at this point in time in its totality, who really knows? But I think we certainly have a better grip on things. And yes, I mean, like I say, in the entertainment business, the show must go on, and I think it's life in general. We've got to go on with it, and yes, Formula One's certainly leading the way in a lot of respects with regards to entertainment right.
Well, I tell you, it's amazing, Gary. Out of all of the senses we have, what is it? Taste, touch, smell, hear, whatever it is. The least common amongst everyone is common sense. And hopefully common sense now will prevail as we go forward. I want to talk about some gimmicks, Gary. The first one where, a lot of people, unfortunately, just think that, well, if you've got a racetrack, why can't you race it in one direction and then race it in the other direction? This is not sim racing, and it is Formula One. I mean, Gary, if people really understood what it takes to get certified to be a Formula One racetrack in one direction, you can't just sit there and say, oh, okay, guys, we'll just race the other way.
No, you can't. I mean, you quite rightly said it. It's just a massive safety issue. It's a completely different track, so of course you understand that. And corners where the runoff was required, it just may not be there. I mean, it's pretty easy to understand that one. You can understand the suggestion, but you can understand also very clearly why it's just not possible. In particular, in short notice, there are certain tracks that they do use in different directions. It is possible, but there's a lot of work that goes with it.
Yeah, exactly. The other one that came up, which was, I suppose it is debatable, Gary, is reverse grid racing. There was this option of, have a qualifying race with a reverse grid, and then from that qualifying race, then that would determine the grid for the next day. And there are too many variables that can go wrong here. And Mercedes were adamant and said, no, we're not going to go with it. And then strangely enough, Racing Point came in, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But the issues that we have with Formula One and reverse grid racing, there aren't any spare cars, number one. If cars gets damaged, they have to be rebuilt, and what happens about that? That can be a really, really problematic area for Formula One. So there are no spare parts. The other issue is, this is Formula One. It is about the best drivers and the best cars. What is your take on reverse grid racing in Formula One? Not any other series, this one specifically.
Yeah, look, it's the risk in Formula One is greater. It's not a touring car race where you can afford to rub door handles and it gets a little more physical. Formula One, as you know, you bump off the front wing or whatever it may be, your race is really done for the weekend. Yes, that is for certain. However, I think that I would sort of agree with Christian Horner in a sense that if there was ever time to try something new, it would be now. And in particular, those races where we have back-to-back races, because there is a strong likelihood that we have two carbon copy events. It just could work like that. But from a racing point of view, it's not something that anybody in any form of racing, the purists that don't want reverse grid, you want the person who's got the best car out there, qualifies the fastest, going to be on pole, and should have a chance to win the race, which is how it's always been in motor racing up until of late, where people have tried to sort of shake up the show. It's a difficult one because on the other end, you'd like to see a guy like Lewis Hamilton fighting his way through the pack, overtaking. They've got a long race to do it in. It could also give people a fantastic show, but there are a lot of risks that go with it. To be totally honest with you, in a time like this, I would have gone with it and said, listen, let's go for broke. We've got a crazy season ahead of us. It's just been a crazy year all around. Why not try it? And that would have been my view for this particular season. And then we understand why maybe we can't do it in the future. But reverse grids do sometimes throw up some fantastic racing and good racing in other categories. It might well be the same for Formula One. But I do understand the reluctance, in particular of Mercedes and Toto Wolff not wanting to go with it. Because you've got to remember, at the end of the day, there's still a world championship to fight for. Yes, it might only be 8 rounds for that matter. It may only be held in Europe. It's still going to be classified as a world championship. You've spent all the money as Mercedes-Benz, as Red Bull, Ferrari, whoever it may be, rest of the field. If you've got a winning car and you've developed a winning car, you don't want to throw away that advantage. So you really can understand why, at this level of the sport, the kind of investment that's involved, why a team like Mercedes would back this.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because Ross Brawn has come out saying that at this juncture, with the calendar that has come out, the 8 races will become a championship event. So even if they only have 8 races, this will be a world championship over the 8 events. 2 other points that you brought up. Had they come out and said, listen, this is a non-championship season, then perhaps they could have gone maybe with the reverse grid option. The other final point I want to make in this is that the restriction on engines, Gary, all of a sudden, the guys are limited to engines. Yes, they only got eight events now. Nobody said, are they restricted to using one engine for all of these 8 events? So we don't know those parameters. But all of a sudden, you blow up an engine. Now you in the reverse grid race, you all of a sudden have an engine failure. Now you get to the main race and you're languishing down in 18th, and yet you have the best car. In normal qualifying, if you make a mistake and you land up 18th, fair enough. But for that, all of a sudden, I suppose it does make it a little tricky.
It certainly does. I mean, it can be bad for somebody, in particular the guys with faster cars. They want to be able to race the cars at the front like they normally do because of the fact that they've got the best car. However, it also gives the smaller teams and other guys that maybe would not have had a chance to score massive amounts of points, help them throughout, to score a decent championship finish. And let's be honest, there's prize money here as well. So for the smaller teams, it could make a lot of sense because it could put them in a higher position than they would normally be. It sort of give them a more opportunity to earn some of the prize money that's available, which is also going to be critical for them to survive going in Formula 1. So there's arguments for and against. I get it, but you've got to believe that the way that Mercedes-Benz kicked back on it tells you that they know they've got something special in their hands. They know they've got a good car. They're going to be a tough team to beat. I think by virtue of this action.
Yeah, exactly. And, we know that they've got the right car. One last point as we discuss this, who knows, but maybe by autumn, so by spring, which you're looking at September, late September, October, we might have Spa-Francorchamps, we might have Monza with spectators. And I mean, wouldn't that be ironic, Gary, to have spectators at Monza, considering the way that Italy was decimated or has been decimated by this virus?
Well, exactly. I mean, it would be fantastic to see. So let's hope and pray that it does actually happen. I mean, I've been lucky enough to spend a bit of time at Monza, both when there's racing or testing going on, or no racing going on, and a Grand Prix weekend. And it is a fantastic place. But yes, I think just from that point of view, to be able to have taken the next step in this fight, to actually have people back at an event like Monza, that would be absolutely fantastic. Even if it was in its limited capacity, whatever it may be, we don't know these things. But yes, let's hope it is the case.
Yeah, it would be, I think, tremendous. Now, a huge story over the last couple of days. You mentioned Mercedes most probably got something very, very special. They don't want to go out there and not give their drivers the opportunity to win a championship. And Lewis Hamilton, of course, chasing number 7, chasing all of Michael Schumacher's records, which I believe he's going to break very, very easily. If there's one person at the moment who is so properly fired up, Gary, to go out there and just show how brilliant he is, and we know that he is brilliant, it is Lewis Hamilton, especially what has happened over the last 4 or 5 days when it comes to the world of social media, to the hashtag of Black Lives Matter. He's been extremely vocal about things, and he's had detractors, and he's also had a lot of people who are standing by him, Formula One standing by him, a lot of the Formula One drivers also standing by him. It's we're not a political show, but it's something where Lewis Hamilton has stood up and said something, and the world has listened.
Well, I think it's important, and I think it also just shows the enormity of Lewis Hamilton's base, and just how important and how loud his voice can actually be. And I think the big thing for me was that he's sort of having a sort of go at the rest of the F1 field for not saying anything, and letting them understand that they do have a voice and a platform to be able to air certain views and so forth. And I think after his post, you saw other drivers and other teams starting to back him and make their own statements, and however they chose to make them. And it just, once again, I think also just shows what the enormity of Formula One, and just the kind of base that Formula One offers, and the world platform that it actually is.
Yeah, that's for sure. And let's believe, you got to believe that when we go racing, he's going to have more detractors, but he's going to have a lot more fans as well, Gary. And we always know in the world of sport, and specifically Formula One, when you're at the top, everyone is trying to get you off, and they will do anything to try and get you off, whether it's shouting at you at social media, voicing their own opinions behind keyboard warriors, or whatever. He's got big shoulders. He's got very wide shoulders. He's been in this game for a long time. He's got a thick skin, and he's going to really need it now.
Yes, I think so, but I think he can be happy in the knowledge that he said what he needed to say and how he said it, and I think it's perfectly okay and acceptable for him to have done what he done. I mean, he couldn't have done anything else, and it was great that he did what he did. So I think yes, there's always a detractor on social media. We know that all of us have been involved in social media, also to a larger or lesser degree. It's just one of those things. But I certainly think he had more support out there than he did going into his first race. I think, but he just keeps on growing the fan base. He could have gone. I think he's done a great job in other issues as well that he's mentioned, that he's highlighted and brought to the fore. And he's been the one Formula One driver that's been prepared to stand up and put his views across. And I think it's fantastic, because you actually get you really know, you kind of get a sense that you know who Lewis Hamilton is and what it's about. And I think that's also why I'm a big supporter. And he's one of the best drivers out there, probably going to be the greatest of all time, as you said just now. Use the platform.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you can only just sit there and say, big up for standing up and doing that. He's done it for veganism. He's done it for climate change, and now, of course, he's been this past week about Black Lives Matter. So, yeah, Lewis Hamilton. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to be they're going to be chasing him. That's for sure. He's going to be right out there at the front. Now, other off-track things that have been happening over the last couple of weeks, Gary, is, Lawrence Stroll, Toto Wolff, Mercedes-Benz, what is going on? And I mentioned it earlier in the show. Mercedes-Benz were the only team who basically sat there and said, we're not interested in reverse grid racing. And then all of a sudden, Racing Point came in and said, oh, no, we also against the reverse grid. Of course, the Racing Point looks very much like last year's Mercedes-Benz. But there's so many rumors that Toto Wolff's going to leave Mercedes. Mercedes are going to leave the sport. Lawrence Stroll's getting the Aston Martin. They're going to be Aston Martin next year, but with Mercedes power. Where there's smoke, there's fire, Gary. We know that. But I'm desperately hopeful that Mercedes-Benz are not going to be leaving Formula One, and whether Toto Wolff stays there or moves to Aston Martin, is irrelevant. This is more about Mercedes-Benz. But that is an interesting photograph. Lawrence Stroll, Toto Wolff, and of course Bernie Ecclestone. What's been your take on Stroll, Wolff, Mercedes staying, going?
Well, I think we've got to look at what's been happening. You've got Formula E, a lot of manufacturers in Formula E. There's certainly a big push in that direction. There was some rumor early on in the year, before any of this happened, that Mercedes-Benz were starting to maybe question their long-term involvement in Formula One. Of course, these, all, and probably were just rumors. But as you said, where there's smoke, there's fire. And, the fact that, as you said, the Racing Point and the Mercedes cars look very, very similar. There's obviously, and it's obvious that there's a connection there. To what level we still needs to be found out. And I think that'll needs to come to the fore when we actually go racing. These guys are all jostling. This is a business at the end of the day. Formula One is a business. It's great to go racing every now and then, but there's a lot of business that happens. It's a big business. And these guys are out there to do what they can do in the business side of Formula One. Toto Wolff has been phenomenal in the sports in terms of finding opportunity. Of course, you go back to Williams' involvement in Formula One. He's done a great job wherever he's been. So it would make sense. But who knows? At the end of the day, there's a lot that we need to understand in terms of how the budget cap's going to work itself out in Formula One. We need to understand all these things. Things are so fluid and things are changing so quick at the moment. You look at other series where manufacturers have pulled out, at the drop of a hat. We don't know really what's going on up there. We've seen it before, Sashi. We saw it with Honda. We saw it with Toyota, 2008. When everybody just ran for the hills when things got really tough out there. So, anything is possible at this point in time.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole thing is in our last show, Gary, we spoke about Vettel. Where's he going to go? Would they replace Bottas? Sainz is going to Ferrari. We have to remember that this is 2020. We still have all of the drivers in their same team. Ricciardo's not at McLaren. He's at Renault. Vettel is not out in no man's land. He's racing for Ferrari. Sainz is racing for McLaren. I want to throw this. If Ferrari, and we saw in pre-season testing, which was a long time ago, by the way, Ferrari either were horribly sandbagging or they've got a bit of a lemon of a car. And I must say, unfortunately, I think it's the latter as opposed to the former. However, they have had time maybe, over this period to improve the car, but they haven't done any testing, so they don't really know what it's going to do. When it comes to Ferrari, if, Gary, they have a car that can challenge Mercedes, which basket do they put their eggs in now? Because I can tell you now, we've seen it in the past with Sebastian Vettel. He's not going to move over for team orders. What is Charles Leclerc going to do if that ever happens?
Well, listen, they've got a race. At the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, the first couple of races, you'll treat it, although it's a short season, you'll treat it like you would any other season. Let the guys go out there and see what happens. If you've got a guy like Vettel that's in the chance for the championship, if he's in the chance for the championship, you're going to have to support him to win the title. There's just no two ways about it. So it's you know, it's going to be an unusual sort of environment for people to work in, you know, coming out of this, coming out of where we have been. And at the end of it, it's about the team and getting your best car across the line first and trying to win the championship. But, you know, I've got to be honest, I really, you know, and I've said this before in a lot of these seasons, I do think that the Mercedes-Benz is going to be a very, very special car this year.
Yeah, I think so too. Yes, they're not holding off the fast pedal, that's for sure. All right, Gary, let's move on to it's a difficult story. I mean, this team has been in Formula One since, I think, 1966. And all of a sudden, it looks like the Williams team is up for sale. Just a little bit of background history on this. And if you look at that picture on the screen, they've lost that sponsor. Rocket is not there, but we'll talk about that in a short while. Williams in 2019 sold their advanced engineering division. Okay, that was their profit arm. Now they've had to refinance themselves because they haven't been racing. They've all of the teams have lost a tremendous amount of money. The fact that they only scored 1 point in 2019 does not give them a lot of television money. So they really are struggling. Now we're at a point where HSBC have come in and provided a loan to them, as well as their one driver's father, and that is Nicholas Latifi's father, Michael Latifi. Now he's come in and put some money in. Now whether or not he wants to also join the ranks of Lawrence Stroll and become a Formula One owner, we can discuss in a short while. But it is very much billionaire's paradise. You've got Lawrence Stroll, Dietrich Mateschitz, you know, Nicholas Latifi. Lando Norris's dad's not quite a billionaire, but he's not short of anything. But this has to be a massive concern for the Williams organization, where once the greatest team in Formula One, it is the third most brilliant team in Formula One. It's all gone wrong, Gary. How has it gone wrong? Where did it go wrong? Who is to blame for this really sad state of affairs at Williams?
Look, you know, at the end of the day, the car wasn't too bad a couple of years ago. If you remember Bottas and Felipe Massa qualifying in the front row of the grid, I think it was Austria. You know, the car was okay. They just weren't able to put a good car on the grid, and you know, everything sort of followed on from there. It just hasn't gone well for them at all. You know, at the end of the day, I mean, you can sort of look at it however you want, but unless there's somebody with massive coffers rocks up and rebuilds the team, and remember, even top teams like Mercedes-Benz, like Ferrari for that matter, you know, to rebuild those teams with the budget that they have, and there's no shortage, so to speak, it's tough to rebuild the Formula One team. So to be in this position now that Williams is in, and having put the team up for sale, having lost sponsors, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to be a tough job. And unfortunately, you know, you look back on teams like, say, Tyrrell in Formula One, others, when it's going bad, it's going bad. And it's difficult to turn around. Yes, of course, everybody hopes Williams will turn it around, get themselves, you know, back into a position where they can at least sort of be competitive. Last year was just an absolute disaster for them. But yes, the reality is it's going to be a tough road. And, you know, they've made no bones about it. The team's up for sale. They need money. It's simple as that. Motor racing costs money. And you need to be able to get the right people, the right drivers. And that's the situation.
Yeah, it's desperately sad, and I'm glad you brought up Ken Tyrrell, because Tyrrell was also one of those teams, and eventually gave it away just about for nothing. So Frank Williams is one of the most revered men in the world of Formula One. You know, and you've got to go back into the history. Yes, the past couple of years you had drivers like Massa, you had Bottas over there, and also just show maybe the capabilities of these two drivers for what they actually managed to do to wring out of that Williams car. But it all stems back to, you know, maybe Frank Williams making decisions where, you know, which were really, really detrimental. Getting rid of Adrian Newey, you know, not wanting to pay that kind of money, not selling out to BMW at the time, and that's where it's all gone wrong. You know, in the last 6 or 7 seasons, last 10 years, Gary, they've had 5 different engine suppliers. And whereas before, you know, they used to get engines for free, Now they've got to pay for the engines, and that's where a lot of their budget is going. And unfortunately, they're taking a hammering on the technical side of their car. With a Mercedes engine, there's no reason why any car out there should be sitting at 19th and 20th.
No, absolutely not. But I think the problem goes back, you think of the Bruno Senna days, so even before the new engines, Bruno Senna, Pastor Maldonado, those sort of guys in the car. Yes, we had that sort of win of Maldonado's in Spain at that point in time. But, when you're starting to put paid drivers into teams, into cars, because you need the money, it's a problem. And, that is the reality. Ferrari don't have paid drivers, Mercedes don't have paid drivers, Red Bull don't have paid drivers. Neither do McLaren, for that matter, and are coming back up into the fore. Renault, yes, is a manufacturer team, they don't either. But as soon as you start putting paid drivers in the team, that tells you the story. And I think we all chatted about that way back when. Just at the amount of paid drivers making their way into Formula One, and also just questioning the cost of actually being in Formula One, or what it takes to be competitive. It's become a very, very exclusive club.
There's been a lot of chat, Gary, about Claire Williams and the way that she manages and operates. I don't know Claire personally, but just from things that I've read and videos that we saw even on the Drive to Survive documentary series on Netflix, she seems like a very, very tough lady, but somehow she seems to have alienated a tremendous amount of people within that Williams organization. Do you think perhaps a change of management at Williams could turn this around, and would the Williams family be willing to relinquish that kind of authority?
Well, who knows? But yes, I think a change of management's good, and it's all good and well. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the funding to actually go through and do the things you need to do, no matter what's happening there, it's just not going to work. Unfortunately, as I said, racing costs money, and it's about the funding at the end of the day. Look, they had Toto Wolff there before he went to Mercedes-Benz. He was also, I think, a shareholder and part of the team. Yes, there comes a time, I suppose, in everybody's life, when Frank Williams is yes, we know that Claire Williams is in the management position there and so forth, but he's had a great career in Formula One, and these things sort of happen. He's at the end of his time, certainly in Formula One. He loves, obviously, being around motor racing in Formula One in particular. That's been his life. I suppose it's difficult to let it go. When you've built this thing up from literally the garage into the organisation that it is today, or certainly that it was in the mid-90s, where they were the powerhouse, in the early 90s to mid-90s. They were the powerhouse of Formula One. They've had a good run at times. It's just, as I said, we've seen it happen in Formula One in the past, and it won't be the last time we saw it. I think you could look at the McLaren example. There was a big change up there. They have managed to turn themselves around, but I do think that McLaren at some point was certainly traveling down the same road. But I think maybe just had a little bit more strength at the time when they needed to make the change, get the new management in, and then just sort of pick themselves up again to get going. And it may well be that Williams has gone too far down the road to actually make that U-turn and get themselves sorted out. Not to sound more negative and whatever about it, but as I said, we've seen this before.
Yeah, listen, I can only hope that perhaps in these 8 races they score enough points to manage to pay off the interest on these loans and get themselves into 2021. All of a sudden, budget caps come in. It's going to make a huge difference to all of the teams on the grid, and hopefully we see the Williams name just continuing in the world of Formula One. But they do go into their first race without their sponsor, which is Rocket, who have pulled out. And unfortunately, it's this Rocket organization seems to be another sort of rich energy under Guy. So we'll just leave it at that. Let's hope that Williams can get themselves sorted out. You mentioned McLaren. McLaren also have their worries. They've had to lay off a lot of people, which is more in the automotive side of their business, Gary. They've had to pay off the balance to Ron Dennis over the last couple of weeks of like £40 million or so. So they're not in the best position. However, they have shown and proven that over the last season and a bit with Zach Brown and Seidel coming in, that all of a sudden that wheel has turned, and that change of management. If Williams want to do something, they've got to look at the model that McLaren have adopted over the last 18 months.
Yeah, certainly so. But as I said, you just got to question whether Williams are strong enough to handle the change, and that's sort of my concern. McLaren, yes, they were able to do so, and it just shows you just how when you can turn the situation and start scoring points and start earning money and start doing things. Yes, it changes everything drastically. But Williams are running their team like they want to run it. Well, the big thing for me was how Paddy Lowe didn't perform in the team, how the car was sort of the worst that they ever had. And I don't believe you can blame it on Paddy Lowe at all. I think that there must be a lot of other things that are going on there that are just not making it easy to be competitive. I know Kubica has come out, he was quite critical, just from a driver's point of view, quite critical of Williams, saying that he was unable to show what he was actually about last year. Yes, he had that incredible comeback, but you could sense the frustration, in what he was saying, and that he just wasn't given the opportunity by Williams. So there must be a lot going on there. And I think at the end of the day, you can dig down as far as you want. At the end of the day, they've lost their sponsor. They don't have a competitive car. They scored no points last year. They're in trouble.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. Last couple of points, Gary, to wrap up this evening. We touched on it a little bit earlier. Going racing with no spectators. I shudder to think. There are a lot of series in the world. We see, and it's amazing, a lot of GT3 tin top touring car series, which are magnificent to see, where they don't have big crowds. I mean, what is this? Can you have any idea what a driver is going to feel? Is it just a glorified testing? This is going to play a massive psychological effect on these drivers, I believe.
I mean, look, I've been an example of that was maybe had some experience in that. I mean, you go do a race like Le Mans, and it's huge, and it's just a massive crowd, and you'll go and do a race wherever else in, say, Barcelona a few months before, afterwards, and you get there and there's hardly anybody there. And it's obviously, it's not great. But, once you're on the track, once you're in your box and you're working with your team, you're focused on the event, and when there's a race going on, you're racing, and all the rest of it sort of takes a back seat. But I just think Formula One, being the show that it is, it's just such an event and just such a massive thing. Everything works together in Formula One, and that's why it's going to be just so unusual for us. But I think once the lights are out and the guys are racing, we're not going to see them race any less hard than we would have seen them racing if there were 250 or 300,000 people there. That is for sure. It'll just take a little bit of getting used to, but I just think solace in the fact that there are millions of people, probably more than ever, watching on TV around the world, and just looking at Formula One and just enjoying what Formula One is, and enjoying the motor racing, and enjoying seeing racing again for the people that this really matters to.
Yeah, I cannot wait, Gary. I mean, the drivers, naturally, I think you're going to be just a little bit rusty. A lot of these drivers have been doing some simulator racing online. I'm not talking about the sim work that they do in the factories for their teams. They've been doing some sim stuff, and the Formula One have had the esports races, etc., etc., and the guys are having a little bit of fun and maybe bashing into each other here and there, which is all good and fun because it's just a game. How do you think, it can relate to the real world, where all of a sudden they go, sure, you know what, that wasn't a bad opportunity at that corner, which I've never thought about before. Are the guys going to be riskier, or once they settle down, they just get into that professional mode and say, let's go for the points or the win?
No, I think the games will be over. When they get onto the track, they're going to be doing what they know how to do best. They're professional racing drivers, not professional sim drivers, although everybody sort of made do with what they had over the period. Ask Lewis Hamilton. He hasn't been part of it at all. So, and I think he's still going to go out there and be as good as he ever was. Listen, I think a lot of these guys actually, in some way, probably appreciated this break that they had. It's been tough in a lot of areas and in a lot of aspects, but I think these guys have a tough schedule. Yes, we hadn't raced yet, but I think a lot of guys just took time to reset, spend a lot of time with family, do things that these guys have probably never been able to really do in their professional careers. And I think that could make a lot of them a lot better, after this sort of break. So the gaming thing, I can't really speak about it because I don't do it. So it's not part of my set. I'm getting too old for it, perhaps. But I don't think it's going to make much difference. We're going to see what we normally see out here on the racetrack.
Yeah, I tell you, I think we're in for something. I anticipate, Gary, that this first race at the Red Bull Ring over the weekend, the 3rd to the 5th of July, might be the biggest Formula One television audience ever. I think that's how much people want to see racing again.
Yeah, listen, absolutely. I mean, I've watched some NASCAR racing. I've watched things. It's just good to see live sport going on again. I mean, it's huge. You just sort of forget, just how what you get, what you derive from it as a fan and as a spectator and a TV viewer. And it's great to see it all happening. There's nothing that's going to replace live sport like it does, and especially the big shows like Formula One and all the other big sports that we have around the world. So yes, I'm certainly looking forward to it, and for a number of reasons. It's been a tough time for all of us. There's no two ways about it. And just to see it all happening again, I just think just provides us with with a lot of hope. I think in general, because yes, Formula One's still here. It was all doom and gloom and everything. The world was going to collapse at one stage, and here we are going racing in Formula One again. And I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is amazing as well. And also, I think, which is very, very good, and my director, Fritz, was just chatting into my ear. For us here in South Africa, we are limited to watching Formula One on one specific channel, and that's what it is, and it's a pay channel as well. However, Formula One have understood that the world is a big, big place, and if people are going to start using torrents and this and that and stealing feeds or whatever, might as well open it up. So do yourself a favor, go to Formula. If you don't have DSTV, for example, if you are watching us from South Africa, and you don't have SuperSport, you can stream it all through F1 TV, f1.tv. Go to the f1.com webpage, check it out. It's going to cost you a few rand, okay, but it's for the whole year. I mean, they gave everyone a grace over the period that we've been under lockdown. So, there are other options nowadays, Gary, and I think that is vital for all sports, but specifically for Formula One. It cannot be dominated by these huge networks anymore.
No, look, I agree with that completely. As you said, all sports, if there's a major sporting code, it needs to be on free-to-air TV. We all understand that there's a lot of negotiation with these broadcasters and people what they're prepared to pay for, etc., etc. We know that it's a business. Formula One makes their money out of selling these rights to the various broadcasters. But at the end of the day, as you quite rightly said, it is a sport that needs to be open, and you want as many eyeballs as you can. So it's a difficult trade-off. You're going to say, well, do you want the eyeballs? Do you want the money in the bank? And I think, with the world the way it is right now, we want eyeballs on the sport, and I think that's what's going to keep the sport going and keep it surviving going into the future. There's no two ways about it. We need people and more people to watch Formula One.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I tell you, Gary, I think what we must do is the Thursday before first free practice, we have another show. If there's anything else that happens in the interim over the next couple of weeks, well, I'll do a couple of shows here. But man, I can't wait for the 2nd of July, where we sit and chat to each other on the Thursday night, getting excited for Formula One again. It's just wonderful that it's going to happen.
Absolutely, I can't wait for it to start. It's just going to be phenomenal. Always happy to chat about it. I think this is just a pure passion of ours. We love Formula One, like so many other millions and millions of people around the world. So look, I cannot wait to see it all starting again. And let's see, maybe we have a surprise or two. Maybe there's a Red Bull that's going to be able to take on Mercedes. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe a Racing Point's going to be beating Ferrari. I think it's just going to be fantastic. And of course, like any start to a season, it's the anticipation that just gets us going. And because we don't know, and that's the world of Formula One. You never know. It's not a guarantee. Nothing's guaranteed. Anything can happen, and that's why we love it.
Yeah, that's for sure. And you know what? The guys are all going to go back there, and there were a group of people who sat there and went, you know what? It's amazing what happens, Gary, when the safety car comes out in the world of Formula One in any racing, and it can happen at the Red Bull ring in Austria. And when the safety car comes out, this is what happens. Oh man, I think that would take a lot of coordination to make that video game. I would have been going the wrong way, I promise you.
Maybe listen.
It's lovely. Brilliant. Gary, always great to chat to you, my friend. Hopefully we'll catch up together very, very soon where we don't have to be this far apart from each other. And who knows, we might even be able to have a beer together. But yeah, Viva Formula One. Bring on the Formula One season. This is the Pitbox. Thanks for joining us from wherever you are. And check out the comments. Please subscribe to the channel. And we will be with you as soon as possible. Thanks, Gary.
Follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at F1 Sacha.